Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a deck profile of a brand new strategy I like to call Psy-Strikers. So, curious thing is, we recently of course had the zombie horde structure deck came out that reprinted the Shiranui Solitaire engine, and we also on my channel here started introducing Psy-Strikers bit by bit when I said I had an interesting idea. Well, this idea is that basically I was looking at the one card Omega play you can make with Shiranui Solitaire at this point probably a couple months back, and I was like, how can I make this work nowadays? And it just so happens that was the first time I looked into Psy-Strikers. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. You need no monsters in your main monster zones to do this, which Omega caters to perfectly. And then combined with some of my personal favorites like Torrential Tribute and Rise to Full Height for shenanigans, I figured this would be a fun variant of Psy-Strikers for me to kind of dip my toes into the strategy and hopefully have some more playtime with before they end up getting hit on the list. But if they do, I understand. They are a very, very overrepresented deck. But yeah, basically I love the control elements of this strategy. It's a bit different from the zombie horde type of decks, so if you want to see those, you can go ahead and click the I card in the corner. I'll have it linked to, more of an actual zombie type of a deck that I've been working on recently and recently profiled. Or if you want to see the in-depth introduction to Psy-Strikers, that link will be up there as well, in case you have never seen how these things work, because I've never really touched upon them on my channel. It's that half-hour block that'll basically give you all the tools you need in terms of playing Psy-Strikers. But essentially, this is a let's build of Psy-Strikers, the Omega-centric strategy that incorporates Psy-Strikers for a little more control, staying power, and, ability to win, I think, in terms of just power. And so we're going to go ahead and explain my thoughts, reasonings and choices as we go and build this deck from the ground up. And then if you just want to see the finalized list, you can go ahead and click the link in the description box. I have a timestamp on all of these little sections in the table of contents in the description as usual, so you can go ahead and check out the alphabetical profile at the end that you're probably used to, or any of the other sections if you're just curious to see what the different pieces of the deck are. So without further ado, let's build Psy-Strikers. As always, the first step in building any deck is to establish the theme and then to build a core that builds around the deck's goals. And here we're talking about the one card Shiranui Solitaire play, like I mentioned, of course freshly reprinted in our zombie horde deck, so much more accessible to people, at least much more so than the second section of this deck, of course. But essentially, Solitaire in here is just lone Fire Blossom. It does have some unique applications if you want to build more with Shiranuis, but I personally did not think that was the best use of the resources. This way, it's just 3 starters that let you go for a 1-card combo involving Uni-Zombie. You just go tribute this guy, and you're able to special summon a 0 defense zombie tuner from your deck. So you play 2 copies of Uni-Zombie. Since it has to be from the deck, you do want a couple of these just so that you never really end up drawing your Solitaire and then have your dead Uni-Zombie. Had this been like a 3-to-1 ratio of an engine, kind of like Brilliant Fusion with Garnet, or, 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗏 with 𝗪𝗏𝗠𝗔𝐼𝐼 for the Preda plants, it probably could have gotten away with 1 Uni-Zombie for mathematics, but you also need another component because of how Uni-Zombie works. The level 3 tuner who can increase either itself or any other monster on either side of the field's level by 1 for each of its 2 abilities once per turn. So you can either discard a card and bump a level, or send Mizuki or Mezuki from your deck to the graveyard, or any other zombie card, and then increase its level as well. If you use that second effect to yard Foolish Burial style, you do have to give up attacks with any non-zombies. In the zombie horde deck that I recently profiled, it makes a lot more sense in that strategy that you want 3 Uni-Zombies because you're able to go ahead, set up these types of plays, and you can attack with everything because you have Zombie World. In this strategy, you're not restricting yourself from building a board because you can special summon anything you want. You just can't attack, so do keep that in mind if you're trying to do damage with, let's say, Hayate, who needs to, deal direct damage in order to yard a Psy-Striker card. Little interactions like that could come up, so just watch yourself here. But very flexible tuner who can be level 3, level 4, or even level 5 if you want. But the whole point is Solitaire going directly into your Uni-Zombie will let you yard Mezuki, which we play 2 of as well, just to make sure we have a target to yard to the graveyard and we don't draw into them. And then once you have Mezuki in your grave, you can banish him in order to summon back your Solitaire. And between your now level 4 tuner and your level 4 non-tuner, you can go ahead and synchro summon Psy-Framelord Omega, who of course has 3 abilities. The first one is to go banish him from the field during either player's main phase in order to dodge your opponent's threats and take out a card from their hand at the same time. They get it banished face up, so you get to see what it is, and they're down a card every time you have Omega on your field, which is really, really cool. Its second ability lets you push cards like 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗍 that are banished by either player back into the graveyard for reuse, which is really, really cool, because with that first ability, you know, nowadays you can't loop Omegas, but if for some reason you have something that's, you know, banished, you could go ahead and push it back. 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗍, it can go back into your graveyard, giving you a free link material or synchro material with the tuners every single turn, which is quite nice. And then if Omega ever happens to die, even at 1, it's not terrible because you can go ahead and recycle him along with any card in either graveyard in order to go ahead and just summon him back again. So cool thing is you can of course recycle your own power spells or something, but you could get rid of your opponent's resources if you so choose, because you can banish or return something from either graveyard back into the deck. So really like the interaction with this. That basically means even with Omega at 1, you're still able to make this combo. So again, just for ratio, so you could see real quick in front of your eyes, it's the 1 Omega because that is all we are allowed to have, 3 Solitaire because that's our main starter, 2 Uni-Zombies because that's what we search off and we don't want to run out of targets in the deck, and then 2 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗍𝗍, kind of for the same reason, but also because, you know, if you happen to draw this, there are a lot of cool things you could do. It's a level 4 Earth, so you theoretically could play 𝗪𝗍𝗡𝗊 in here and go ahead and 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗍𝗏 for some cheeky plays or whatever, but I like 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗍 into as well, just to make sure that we get our play off and we get the payoff from the Shiranui Solitaire. Not terrible cards to draw, like 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗏𝗏 or Garnet, or not 𝗪𝗠𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗪𝗠𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏 or Garnet, so still worth playing the 2 of each just to make sure you get your Solitaire off. The second section of the deck is the Psy-Strikers. If you haven't already played with this strategy before, or at least looked at the cards, I highly recommend you check out the eye card in the corner to make sure you can go ahead and look at the in-depth introduction to Psy-Strikers. That half hour that you can kind of skip through will give you all the necessary tools you need to be able to wield these guys. So I'm just going to go through and do very brief, kind of important details once you understand how these cards work in this following section here. So if you didn't play this theme before, you might be a little lost. But essentially, this, of course, we start off with our 3 engage. This thing you can set up quite nicely into your Hornet drones, which you can go ahead and summon into your 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗊. So remember, 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗊 triggers upon any special summon of her, and that is just a hard once per turn because you can't summon more than 1 of her per turn. But the whole point of this sequence here is, even without playing, you know, too many other Psy-Striker cards, your engage becomes a Hornet drones, and then Hornet drones is your non-normal summon, so you could do this in addition to your Omega Solitaire play, and then, you know, you don't end up losing any of your ground as you're getting this all built up. We will need some more spells to consistently get to the 3 to unlock all of our second abilities though, so do keep that in mind as you're going through here. But don't forget, as just a general reminder, engage is not a once per turn, so 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗊 can go ahead and reuse her in order to Rhoda for a card and potentially get you that upstart draw on top of it twice if you're really able to set that up. So those are just things we're keeping in mind. And then 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗊 does have a nice boost effect, allowing her to do a lot of damage, you know, because she gains attack for each spell. But, you know, more details in that other video. Next big monster is Psy-Striker Ace Shizuku. She needs a non-water monster, whereas 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗊 needs a non-fire in order to summon. And you're basically able to do the exact opposite. She boosts, or I guess debuffs, all of your opponent's monsters attack and defense 100 per each spell instead of boosting your own guys. And then the big thing with this, I forgot to mention in that other video, is that you're able to go ahead and choose end phase effect timing. So cards like Shizuku and multi-roll don't activate in chain to each other. You choose which order to activate them. So perhaps I already have, you know, a single copy of Engage in my graveyard, and I have multi-roll out, right? My main recycler. I can go ahead and set this card to the field. I no longer have Engage in my graveyard. Shizuku can go ahead and fetch a copy of that from my deck, and I'm able to go ahead and have 2 Engages. And, you know, that can work with any other card as well. Engage is just an example that'll come up a lot, but you could easily use like a quick play spell or something just to have more board control or whatever. Shizuku is useful for that. And so 3 of her as well, just because like 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗊, you need to have 3 of each of these for the resource game, because this is kind of a deck of attrition. Very rarely do you OTK with this strategy, and that's where Omega kind of blends in nicely, is that it adds in a lot of staying power because your opponent can't really take the card out when it's leaving the field every turn. Multi-roll, another thing I'll say about it is it is very useful as a starter. Even in this deck, you're able to go ahead and get rid of maybe a monster that you have sitting in your main monster zone on the zombie side or something that you failed to use or whatever. Or you could go ahead and just get rid of one of your other spells, send it to the grave, protect yourself from Ash Blossom, all that fun stuff. And then, again, choose what order you activate multi-roll so you're able to actually take advantage of this Spellbook of Judgment-like effect. And then, you know, just keep gaining your resources back, essentially. Then, the next card here is definitely a 3 of 𝗖𝗍𝗡𝗃. Even if you bump down, like, multi-roll to 2 or something, I just play 3 because I wanted to maximize access to Spellbook of Judgment. But 𝗖𝗍𝗡𝗃 is your Forbidden Chalice without the attack boost, or you could even steal your opponent's monster. Just make sure you don't steal your opponent's monster if you still have more of these cards to play. You can chain all of these cards together, even if you have, you know, monsters throughout the chain, they'll still resolve. It's just you can't introduce more cards if you've controlled a monster, so watch out for how you use these things. But these are amazing going second or any other time during your turn where you're able to just take your opponent's monsters, link them up into bigger things, even if they're already high link monsters. And these will have ramifications in how we build our extra deck so that we can take advantage of any monster we may steal. Shark Cannon basically gives us the same kind of flexibility with our opponent's graveyard, banishing a monster and effectively nullifying that monster from the grave, or stealing it from the graveyard. And again, you could do similar things with that. Just a one of, because, you know, it's not quite as useful against everything. Stopping what's on the board is usually more important, but Shark Cannon is an extra layer of defense that usually doubles up or adds an additional, you know, a little bit of extra maneuverability. Then we have our Eagle Booster. I like 2 of this because this card combos nicely with Torrential Tribute that we'll get to in the text section. It also works nicely in just being a quick play spell that's so versatile you could throw this down. So let's say you already have your multi-roll out, right? So this card counts, remember, during either player's turn, the number of Psy-Striker spells that you activated that turn, and lets you recycle cards up to that amount of different names. So how do you play Eagle Booster? Let's say I Shizuku for this card to my hand. I immediately activate it because it can't be set during my end phase anyway. It goes, you know, chooses a random monster. Oh, I increased the count by 1. So regardless of how many I had before added to this count, I can set that Eagle Booster immediately and have a defense for my next turn. It can go ahead and protect Omega or any other extra monster, even if it's not, you know, a Psy-Striker monster. So highly flexible card, works nicely with the multi-roll, and technically speaking, that multi-roll combo does work with any of the quick play spells, but Eagle Booster was the first way I recognized it just because of how flexible the card is and the fact that you could play it at any time. So don't forget that that is a thing you're able to go ahead and take advantage of. Then we have monster removal and spell and trap removal with the unlocked effects of being kind of the reverse, you know, vice versa opposites here. And main thing I want to point out with jamming waves is it kills a spell or trap first, and a lot of people ask, can I cut this because I don't play against a lot of spell and traps right now? Well, honestly, you want to play the 1 copy because it's a searchable engaged target that lets you go kill your own spell. And now, let's say you already have 2 spells in your grave. The way this effect works in sequences, it'll use the first part, kill this, so now you're up to 3. Now, it checks because of that second part. You have 3, you could kill a monster on top of it, even if you just hit it. So very, very flexible card. Not only does it get you set up like multi-roll or any other card that sends your spells to the grave, but it's able to go ahead, kill your opponent's spells or traps if that's better. You can potentially kill your opponent's cards, even if you only have 2 setups, so very powerful. Don't forget that about jamming waves there. And then last of the actual spells is our Hercules base. I chose not to play any of the field spell just because of bulkiness. Usually I would play 2 to 3 field spells with 2 terraforming. So that's, you know, 4 or 5 cards. Didn't have the space for it in this strategy because I'm combining with another one. Main thing with that is you're potentially using it as like a way of you set the field spell and then you get rid of the field spell with your multi-roll, with, you know, the jamming waves or whatever, and then you could special summon Ray. That's really the only reason I would use it. If you're playing pure Psy-Strikers and you have more and more cards, maybe you could play the excavate effect, but it's still kind of a gamble with the counts that you tend to play in a competitive, you know, pure Psy-Striker deck. So just Hercules base. That's why, you know, Airspace Zero is not in here. But back to this card. Equip it to a monster who can no longer attack, and then, or no longer attack directly, but you can kill monsters twice per turn now, thanks to this card, and then you let you draw 1 every time you kill a monster, which is pretty nice. It's basically Pot of Greed in that sense. And then if this card is sent from the field to the grave by a card effect, maybe it's your jamming waves, multi-roll, whatever, you're able to go ahead and recycle 3 of your non-base monsters or spells or cards, really. So doesn't matter, you know, you can't choose copies of base, so you can't loop it, but you can recycle any of your other Psy-Striker cards, and that lets you get away with fewer counts and still recycle things. So I really do like the 1 copy of that, just to make sure I never run out, because again, deck of attrition. You're gonna make sure you want to make sure you never run out of cards, and this helps you do it. 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗃 at 2, unfortunately, just because I needed some extra spots in my extra deck, so I did have to cut the third of this versus 𝗪𝗓𝗄 or Shizuku. She's able to attack directly and does 1500, then is able to yard our 𝗖. That's the main reason she's in here, other than the consistent 1500 damage. 𝗖 has a quick effect that says you could tag her out into a Psy-Striker Ace pilot into your extra monster zone as a special summon. Doesn't matter if it's not a link, because again, all these guys that trigger will trigger upon special summon no matter how. And a cool thing with 𝗖 is that she has a quick effect in the graveyard, where if you lose one of your pilots while they're there, she'll come back out from the grave, and then she has that quick effect. She could tag into another one. That's why the one copy, because 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗃 can send a Psy-Striker card directly to the graveyard. So of course you could toolbox things that you can search with multi-roll, but main reason you want to play it is for the 𝗖. So one copy of her, just to make sure. Now you have 5 cards essentially between 3 engages, Hornet Drones, and the one 𝗖. And then 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗃 basically adds a layer of defense to the strategy, getting rid of your Ace 𝗖. When you're going second or whatever, you're able to attack directly, and then now you have this never-ending cycle, hopefully, of your Psy-Striker monsters. And believe it or not, we're already at the end of this deck profile. We're going to go through and talk about the tech for the main and the extra deck. This is kind of one of the benefits of the Psy-Striker and other, in-depth intros. So again, I encourage you guys to do it. It's a different format from usual, and that's why I'm, letting you guys know that that exists. So if you found that last section confusing, it's because I already talked about it for half an hour, and I don't want to make this video into a 50-minute video, basically. So for tech, we play 2 copies of Dino Wrestler Pankratops. I love this card. If you've never seen it before, you're in for a treat. So Earth, level 7 dinosaur with 2600 attack, 0 defense. If your opponent has more monsters than you do on the field, even if you control cards, they just have to have more than you. You could drop this guy from your hand once per turn. Then during either player's turn, you could tribute a copy of this card or any other Dino Wrestler, realistically just this, in order to destroy a card your opponent controls by targeting it. So really, really cool, right? Because if you go second, you're able to basically drop this guy, attack with its 26, and then pop it, and then pop something else with it. Or it's a quick effect, so you can even interrupt your opponent on top of all of your annoying quick play spells that this deck has to offer. Because your deck is playing Omega, who runs away, and then your extra monster, and that's it just for the core mechanic of Psy-Strikers, this card is absolutely awesome. It synergizes perfectly with this, even better in the side potentially, but I did like how flexible this card was, so I figured, you know what? Let's just go ahead, run with 2 of them. I haven't been disappointed so far. Again, maybe even more of kind of a min-max benefit if you were to go and put them in the side instead, at which point you definitely would run 3 of those in there, but I did like how this card performed, so I wanted to play the 2 copies of that. Then we play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, on top of it being the You Can't Touch Your Deck card that it is. Don't forget it's a zombie tuner, so it's just another card you could bring back with Mezuki in order to have, access to level 3 tuner monsters for your own proactive plays. Then, to help the Psy-Striker section, because again, we did cut some stuff, we're playing not 2, but 3 Foolish Burial Goods. So usually I play 2 in a pure deck because you have so many, cards that access Psy-Striker cards and then send them to the grave. Cards like the field spell. But in this case, just by playing 1 more copy of this, you're not increasing your chances significantly of drawing into multiples. Because if you draw a 6-card hand because you're going second, let's say, right? And 5 cards, it's even less than this. But let's say you're drawing the full 6 going second. 2 copies, your chance of drawing into both of these is 1.9%. Less than 2%. It's less than 1 in 50 games. That's like nothing, right? If you add the third, your chance of drawing into 2 or more of these is a whopping 5%. That's it. So it's 1 in 20 games where you might draw more than 1 of these. That's not an issue, because if you resolve 1 of these, you send Metal Foes Fusion to your grave, and you have 2 spells instantly. Your third engage becomes, get your eagle, not eagle booster, the Hornet Drones, turn that into a 𝗪𝗓𝗄𝗃, bring back engage, and then engage is set up with 3 right then and there, off of just having Foolish Burial Goods. And again, the other 95% of the time that you don't get that, it's an instant 1 card, set up most of your graveyard, and I felt this deck really did need that in order to make sure, you get your Psy-Striker section started with a little bit taken away from what the rest of the deck is able to provide to that side of the engine. So that's why it's in here. And again, in case you didn't pick up on it, Metal Foes Fusion, you're not using for the fusion effect, you're basically just recycling it from the graveyard once per turn to draw a card, which turns it into an upstart goblin so that you don't lose advantage advantage off of the Foolish Burial Goods, but temporarily it puts 2 spells in your grave, and that cannot be understated in this deck, how powerful that is. On top of that, Foolish Burial Goods has some really cool applications as well, and we'll get to those in just a moment here. But I also have here 2 copies of Twin Twisters. This basically puts more spells in your graveyard, which is really, really powerful. Able to interact with your opponent's back row plays during their turn as a quick play spell is nice. Gets rid of 2 things, so it's very powerful. Lets you discard so you can get rid of zombie cards or spells, and then you can even pop your own spells if you have to, like your jamming waves. So all around very flexible. Can instantly are 3 spells out of nowhere, so this card is a must run at some quantity. Again, even if your opponent's not playing heavy back row, it might be worth playing a few of them just so that you can actually consistently hit your 3 that you need. And then 1 upstart just because 1,000 life points you don't care about so much, because yes, this is a deck of attrition, but it's not like, oh no, my opponent has 1,000 extra life. It's basically you're missing a huge chunk of life you can't kill them through. So extra power, you know, through Omega coming back every single turn and never leaving helps a lot in that strategy. But Upstart Goblin basically just gets you a free spell in your grave, so it gets you closer to that all-important engage setup. Because even if the first one is just a Rhoda and you don't get the free draw, you definitely want the second time it comes through with Kagari's recycling effect to have the 3rd spell, and Upstart Goblin gets you pretty much towards that for free. And then fun little card that we use with our Foolish Burial Goods on top of all the stuff that you just saw for Psy-Strikers is 1 Rise to Full Height. So if you didn't watch that zombie synchro deck I did a while back with the Omega and 3 copies of this card, it lets you target a face-up monster on the field, double its defense. Its defense becomes 0 at the end of the turn though, but you rarely ever use that effect. You use it for its other effect. It says you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a face-up monster you control, in other words, your Omega. And then for the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot attack monsters you control other than to attack that monster. Actually, they can't attack in general except to attack that monster. You can only activate 1 of these per turn. So the interaction is, let's say I have this set, right? If it's set, I mean, I guess I would activate its effect. It goes, chooses this, it goes to the graveyard. You can only activate 1 of these per turn, but it doesn't say 1 of its effects per turn. So that was my 1 activation. I can immediately banish it from the graveyard in order to target my Omega, who then becomes the 1 allowable attack target. It's standby phase. I push this card back to the graveyard, and then, you know, I can use it again later if I want. But the whole point is now during main phase, my opponent gets 1 potential action before Omega is able to respond, and then once he leaves the field with his effect, Omega's gone. They can no longer attack me for the rest of the turn. My extra monster zone is safe, so Kagari or whatever is safe up there. Probably more like a Shizuku, you know, but that's safe. We end up having Rise to Full Height back in the graveyard if we really want it, and Mizuki's not set up yet or whatever, for some reason, you can go ahead and do that. Or if, you know, this is a better option than Mizuki. Basically makes it so if you don't draw into a very powerful setup, this card single-handedly with the 3 copies of your Burial and this 4 copies total makes it so you basically get Omega to protect you forever with this, because it's not an unbreakable setup by any means, but it's very difficult to, because this card dodges pretty much everything, and then this card just activates in the grave and then comes back to the grave, so like it never really has an opportunity to be destroyed through conventional means. Again, things can stop it, like Ghost Ogre would stop the Omega and stuff, but even if they did that, as long as Rise to Full Height has resolved on Omega, you're still going to be protected for the turn because Omega's gone, and then next turn you could recycle Omega, maybe summon it back depending on your setup, and then if you were able to recycle the Rise to Full Height, you could do that again. So very flexible, extra benefits that you get for just playing 1 copy of this. I love the depth that it gives, so definitely love it for that. So I like playing the 1. And the last card here is just 3 copies of Torrential Tribute, one of my favorite cards of all time here. No longer the staple trap that it once was, but still highly, highly powerful because excuse me there, because you're able to go ahead and destroy everything on the field monster-wise during either player's turn, and that's just so unexpected these days. Omega plays right around it. You can Eagle Boost your extra monster zone guy so that it doesn't die, so everything's basically invincible. You have the main deck ways of consistently playing through this card or around it yourself, but your opponent may not be so lucky, especially when you're able to go and Widow Anchor their key pieces so that they don't get their monsters protected by their effects or whatever. So very flexible, very unpredictable card. And then don't forget, you can also play around some interesting things as well, like Effect Failure won't be able to touch it if you have Torrential Tribute. I don't know if Infinite Impermanence is worded the same way, so let me know down below. I don't remember off the top of my head whether or not Infinite Impermanence can be stopped using Torrential Tribute as well. Basically, you know, is the monster going to be free to use its effect if it's no longer on the field? Effect Failure, I know for a fact, says it must stay a valid target to be a monster on the field in order for its effect to be negated. So I know Torrential works in that way, but just a fun little thing. This card is just absolutely crazy still, so definitely like playing it as the last few in the main. And then our extra, basically, Nightmare Phoenix and Unicorn are in here at link 2 and 3 because you need monsters. You can just use any 2 guys because I need one that I could steal from my opponent with like a Widow Anchor and then one of my own guys, especially with the Unicorn. If I steal a link 2, I can't make everything I want in the game with it quite as flexibly because Mizuki gives me non-Psy-Striker, non-Link monsters as material for free. To take advantage of it, Unicorn's good. And then these cards are fairly general. Spell and trap removal, spin any card back, discard a card, draw a card if you have them co-linked. Very flexible, all around, all-stars, so love them for that. And then in addition to that, a specialized choice in this deck is World Chalice Ningirsu. This card is absolutely nuts. You don't get the draw effect because this isn't World Chalice, but spoilers, if you're watching this, World Chalice is coming to the channel very soon. I actually built that deck way before all this stuff, but Psy-Strikers take priority because there's a good chance they'll get banned out of nowhere one of these days. But essentially, Ningirsu needs Link monsters to summon, but you're playing Link 1s all the time, and then you could steal a Link 2 from your opponent with Widow Anchor, so very easy to do, or Shark Cannon, that works too. You use its other ability, or basically you can send one card from each side of the field to the graveyard, your choice, at resolution, which is really, really crazy removal. And then he has 2500 attack to follow up, and you can even link him up if you really want to. So all around amazing card. You end up gaining so much control and advantage off of this one card that you're not going to lose most likely, even if you turn your Psy-Striker pilots into this guy. So one very good link monster exception where it's actually okay to go ahead and link up into this guy using your monsters. And then for link 4s, we play Boral Sword Dragon, which basically helps end games out of nowhere. If you haven't seen this card yet, definitely take a look at it. Basically, his arrows are up, down, left, and down. So firewall, but this thing instead points this way. And it's got 3000 attack like the other Borals. Can't be destroyed by battle is his effect. And then it says you can target any monster on the field that's in attack position during either turn, switch it to defense. Your opponent can't respond to it, and then if you do, you're able to go ahead and have this guy attack twice that turn, which is really cool because he's got 3000 attack. That's 6000 if he attacks directly, right? But it gets even better. If he attacks a face-up monster, once per turn, you can absorb half of that monster's attack and decrease their guy, increase your own guy. Basically, you're doing 3000 through one of their monsters, and then if you attacked a weaker guy after that, since you keep the boost till the end phase, you're able to go ahead and do more than 3000. So you're able to do at least 6000 damage with this guy, attacking into 2 attack position monsters, which you can see ends games very quickly when you combine it with things like Omega. So very, very powerful card for attacking. This card is absolutely necessary in this deck because this deck is so slow at doing damage otherwise. You're going to fight that really slow grind game if you don't have something like this to just close things out as soon as possible. But unfortunately, he requires 3 effect monsters to summon, not 2. So I can't just go steal a Link 3 with Widow Anchor or Shark Cannon and then use my 1. That's why we're pretty much forced to play Topologic Bomber Dragon. This thing's still pretty good, is able to do 3000 through its burn effect because it's basically a Flame Wingman if you remember that card. And then on top of that, has an ability to clear both main monster zones by blowing everything up anytime something touches one of those arrows there. And that's really cool because that's what you want in Psy-Strikers. You want to keep your main monster zones clean, and then if you just have this guy, 3000 𝗵𝗍, threaten your opponent for 3000 direct attacks or otherwise every turn, you protect him with Eagle Booster and your quick play spells, and your opponent's going to cry if they can't get rid of this guy. So still a very powerful card, and main reason again you play him is you need 2 monsters to summon him, which is very easy to do because you just Widow Anchor or whatever, and you have your play. And then the last card is Black Rose Dragon, mainly for that blow up effect. It's a level 7, but guess what? You play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and 2 Uni-Zombie. All are level 3 tuners. Mizuki is a level 4 monster. Shiranui Solitaire is a level 4 monster. So you have plenty of ways to bring a 3 and a 4 together, especially with Mizuki being recycled every turn that you're not using the Rise to Full Height trap shenanigans. So Black Rose is basically able to bomb the field at any time, threaten your opponent's board, and again, everything you have dodges or just, bunkers down with the Eagle Booster, and your opponent's field probably won't be so lucky. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks! Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of this awesome deck as much as I did putting it all together for you guys. We'll start off with the main here and then go through from there. So we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, double Dino Wrestler Pankratops, double Mizuki, triple Shiranui Solitaire, and 1 Psy-Striker Ace Ray, she's flying solo in this build, and double Uni-Zombie for monsters. Then for spells, we have triple Foolish Burial Goods and the 1 Metal Foes Fusion. Then for Psy-Striker spells, we got Afterburners, Jamming Waves, double Eagle Booster, Hornet Drones, Shark Cannon, triple Widow Anchor, triple Multi-Roll, 1 Hercules Base, 3 Engage, and then for other spells we got double Twin Twisters, we got our Upstart Goblin, and then traps 1 of the Shenanigans Rise to Full Height card, and then 3 copies of Torrential Tribute for a 40 card main deck. And then for our extra, flat 15 of course, we have triple Psy-Striker Ace Kagari, triple Shizuku, double Hayate just for space reasons, but I would try to fit in 3 if I could. Then we got for Link monsters other than that, Nightmare Phoenix at Link 2, Unicorn and Ningirsu, World Chalice Warrior at our Link 3 slots. Then for Link 4s we have Boral Sword Dragon and Topologic Bomber Dragon, and Synchro's Black Rose Dragon at level 7, and Psy-Framelord Omega at 8. That's the end of this video, but there's plenty more where it came from. I invite you to explore the playlists on screen to see what else I have to offer, and if you really liked what you saw today, consider subscribing to JDGaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.